Hello, I'm John Garcia,
And I'm Steve Edwards.
and we are weeding through
Through the
BS.
BS. So,
Right.
we usually get started in a different way, but today, because John is virtual and I'm here, I want everybody, John, I want you to move a little bit. Let's show them that logo. Let's show. This is what we call the word art logo, right? Weeding through the BS. That's all the challenges that we went through. And then we have the beautiful graffiti here. It's here. One of these episodes, John, we need to really get into weeding through the BS of just how we picked out the logo and the stuff that we got. And maybe we can even show the one that we had one made, Matt, that they literally took weed in a different light. And the weeding through the BS was a picture of a lion with pot leaves all over it. It was, they didn't understand what weeding through the BS really meant. We'll get into that at a later one. I want to thank our sponsors, leadershipbooks.com. We're excited to be able to partner with you to bring out the weeding through the BS series, right? Started with my book of the challenges of a tech startup, all the way to the next 6 authors of what's going to be in that series. Jason Hill over at the Owl app, excited about what he's building with, ability to just call an expert, find out from an expert with a quick phone call away right through the app, as well as Think Big websites and everything that they do for Weeding Through the BS. So without further ado, we are excited today to have Matt Krenz on. Over 30 years of leadership and 27 years in the Army as a retired sergeant major. Welcome, Matt. Excited to have you. Tell the audience a little bit about Matt and his story, and then we're going to get in and we're going to get down to weed through the BS that you've gone through.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve, for the invitation, and John, it's really great to be here. What a great concept to be able to talk about, really weeding through the BS in all aspects and concepts of life. So again, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk with you a little bit about myself and my experience, again, over 30 years of leading people and how you have to be able to weed through the BS in order to be successful. So a background about myself: from a very small town in Wisconsin. And I knew at that point in time, coming from a small town, as great as it is, I realized very early on that in order for me to get away, I needed to get away, meaning I needed to find a way out of this small town, Wisconsin, if I wanted to really experience the things that I thought was important. So on the day I turned 18, I decided to go ahead and skip high school, and I enlisted in the United States Army. After I enlisted, I came back for the following 4 months to graduate high school, and I shipped off that summer. And from that point forward, I basically spent my adult life serving in the United States Army, and then following on serving in the United States Army National Guard. So, there's a lot of experiences and a lot of hands-on leadership that you learn through the military. That's different than what you read in books, and different from what you might hear and see other people do. So I think that I can give some sort of understanding of what my experiences were, and I'm excited to kind of talk a little bit more about how we can weed through the BS.
All right. So Matt, obviously we've known each other a long time, right? We're both from small town Wisconsin, went to the Army. But we know I boxed in high school, so we're going to take the gloves off right here. I'm going to get into the first BS question. Is a coach the same thing as a mentor?
Absolutely not. So, I think there's a lot of people that misconstrue the term mentorship just in general. I don't care whether you're in business, I don't care whether you're in the military, there's this buzzword of, hey, we need to be able to mentor down to these junior employees, these junior soldiers, junior airmen, I don't care what branch of the service, right? We need to mentor them so they're going to be able to grow up and be X. It's BS. The bottom line comes down to, there is a huge distinction between a coach, someone who can teach you concepts, things or aspects that are important, and someone that is a mentor that an individual actually chooses as someone they want to emulate and be like. I think the best analogy I can give, I'm a sports guy. I love football, diehard Green Bay Packers fan. So when I take a look at a sports analogy, you have players that will come onto a team and they have a coach. And that coach, whether it is, if there is their offensive coordinator, whether it's the head coach, doesn't matter position, they're able to learn aspects and learn skills or traits or things that are going to make them more proficient within that individual skill. That does not mean that that coach is that individual's mentor. That means that they're their coach. So as you take a look at different aspects and people that you work with, you make a decision and you see people through your perspective of, is this somebody that I truly want to emulate in a majority of aspects of their life, whether that be personally, professionally, different aspects. You have to make that choice. And many times the most prosperous mentorship relationships are one that's chosen between both parties. The individual chooses and asks that person that, hey, I want to mentor. You do the things and act the way that I want. Are you willing to do it? And that other person, the mentor, has to say, yes, I'm willing to kind of make you be a mentee. And there's a different thing when you're a mentee. It's more than just, hey, let me teach you how to go ahead and run this route as a football player, or how to go ahead and do this task. They're there for you in all aspects. They're there to give you advice on business. They're there to give you advice on potential ways to do different things within your life. That is what a mentor does. It's a much larger investment than just the coach. So I know long rambling, but again, for me, I'm very kind of passionate about that, because for 30 plus years, I've been preached of, we need to mentor, we need to mentor, we need to mentor. I agree, we need to mentor, but I can't force mentorship on anyone. They have to choose me to be a mentor.
So what you're saying is a lot of these things that saying we're mentoring you, it's not really mentoring, right? That's the BS. It's really their coaches.
Correct. And there's nothing wrong with being a coach. It truly comes down to, I might start, and Steve, you might be my coach and I might learn things from you, but eventually that relationship can evolve into a mentor-mentee type of relationship. But initially, if I don't see those aspects and I don't necessarily aspire to be Steve Edwards, to me, you're not my mentor. You're a coach. You're someone there to help me accomplish or learn these tasks. It's a lot broader and it's a lot deeper. A mentorship, in my opinion, is a much more of an emotional investment into a relationship, where a coach and a player, or coach and a student, is much more of a transactional process.
John, there's my strongest goat's breath. I mean, that's powerful right there, Matt. And, you know,
I'm just going to say, Matt, on the side, I do health coaching, and I love what you said, because, my thing is just very specific, one niche, actually, I kind of try to help people habit change. That's kind of like where I go with my health coaching, because it's kind of like the root of all behaviors is your habits, but I'm not going to mentor somebody on things that I'm probably not comfortable with. So I love how you said, it is a much bigger investment. It's probably more well-rounded investment. It's probably much more longer term. And I love that it's a two-way street, right? Like, I have to want to be with this mentor as much as, because if you're on a team, your coach is your coach, but your mentor is something else. I like how you put it, that it really should be chosen both ways.
Absolutely. And I think the aspect that I kind of hit on, understand that a lot of times with a coach player, or again, coach employee type of relationship, is somewhat transactional, right?
Yeah.
There's, in a mentorship, this is Matt's opinion, but I mean, at times as a mentor, I can absolutely gain satisfaction from mentoring people, but typically there's not a return on investment that's a tangible, like, hey, I'm getting paid a bunch of money to be a mentor. It is, you're doing it because you have this relationship to want to help or want to nurture your mentee, where a coach type of relationship is typically transactional. This is, hey, the coach wants to coach this person for X, Y, and Z reason. And it might not be hey, because it's the best interest for you as the individual. It might be because, hey, by coaching you to do this thing great, you're going to help me do this even better.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important, right? We know I talked about mentoring a lot, and there's so many people that, want to mentor, but why do they want to mentor? And I say this, in one of the chapters of the book, I talk about when a mentee is talking to a potential mentor, they need to ask him, why are you a mentor? Why do you want to be my mentor? What have you done that has walked in the same shoes as me? And there's people that go completely opposite. Like, Steve, they don't have to walk in your shoes. And, I kind of say it like this. You can be my mentor and I can learn from you. That's really my goal, right? So we don't make poor decisions. Hopefully everybody's going to make them. But if somebody is a VP of a marketing firm and they have a $10 million a month budget for marketing and they can do whatever they want, how can they mentor a startup with a shoestring budget when they don't understand, hey, that money is coming directly from that startup's pocket? And that's when I say sometimes, that mentee needs to say, have you been in my shoes? Have you done that? Let me talk to other people that you've mentored, because I believe having a great mentor is important. I have some phenomenal mentors right now that I can call about any problems. I can text them, right? They're going to help me. I've had some mentors in my life that were absolutely terrible. I'll tell you that, one guy was kind of mentoring me a little bit. He was probably more of a coach on Matt's side. And he was one of the ones that said, hey, I landed a client that did virtual reality. You should talk to him. And that's how virtual really kind of started. The guy was in my office and I was showing him something. He fell asleep. I'm like, how can you can't even sitting there, right? You want to talk about weeding through the best. Dude's falling asleep in my office. And I'm like, how can you help me, coach me, mentor me, anything when you can't even stay awake for 30 minutes, So Matt, we kind of got into that question, but what do you think if you can look back over your 27 years in the military? And, I know you've been all over the place and you've done a lot of different things, but what can you say that's something that's probably one of the either biggest misconceptions or BS that you dealt with in the military?
Well, I think a big conception, whether it's the military, Steve, or in business, obviously, I retired from the military 2 years ago, and I'm working in the nonprofit sphere right now. The reality comes down to success is not solely based on performance. And why I say that and why it's important for people to really understand and wrap their arms around it truly comes down to the fact that you can have very high performing individuals, and I dare to say teams, but a high performing organization that is still very dysfunctional and not successful. So you might have a high performing team or organization for short durations, but in the long run, if there's no cohesiveness, if there's no trust, that is all going to go away. Just like you see within any normal market, the bottom line comes down to you have to be able to have an ability for long sustained capacity and capability. And what I found within the military is you see a lot of rock stars. You see a lot of people that can come into a unit, into an organization that are a high performer, but high performers that are solely about themselves to show that they're a high performer and don't have any desire or I hate to use the term empathy, but they're focused on them instead of a team concept is going to be a slow cancer that can potentially destroy your organization. So looking at startups, for example, levels of leadership vary, whether you're, a high hierarchy organization where there's 5, 6, 7 layers from the president down to your entry level employees, or whether it's a very flat organization. The reality comes down to how are you able to build a culture that allows you to have sustainability to grow and be a high performing organization. So as a small group, if you're 2, 3, 4 employees, having that initial high performing individual is going to allow you to start to grow, right? It gives you the inertia to get things going. But if you have one super rock star that is a toxic, cancerous employee for the other three, eventually you're going to start having issues, right? You have to start building a culture at that level. And what I found, the reality is, I personally would rather take somebody that has average capabilities, is not an overperformer, but is going to be consistent in getting done with the tasks and truly cares about what they're doing and the people around them, than somebody that is a very high performing, but unfortunately narcissistic or selfish individual that really doesn't care for the team. They're more focused on, hey, I'm going to be the best person in sales because I want to make $1 million a year. What's the expense? If they're making $1 million a year in sales because they're, it's helping the team grow, I'm all about it. But if they're making $1 million a year at the expense of other people they're working with, it's going to be a cancer that is slowly going to degrade the organization that you work in. And
John, he said your word, right? Workforce culture. We know how important that is, but anything you want to talk on that? We know that's a good button for you.
Well, I mean, he's 100% spot on, because we've even experienced it in a small company. Like you really do have to. You want the sales and you want the rock stars, but you want the culture. I saw actually something, I think it was Navy SEALs, where they had this graph, and it was like, do you want the performer, or do you want the coachable, trustworthy guy? And it was actually like they wanted the coachable, trustworthy guy a lot of times, more than that performer. So, I could see. So that guy's maybe not coachable. You think he's not? You can't mentor him. Is it beyond?
No, John, that's absolutely it. The analogy you take a look at, and this is, honestly, Simon Sinek is one that kind of talked about this. But I mean, the term within the military is, hey, I might trust you with my life, but do I trust you with my money and my wife? Right? And so it really comes down to, trust is the foundational piece for any successful business, period. If you don't trust your employees, if the employees don't trust one another, you're going to have an issue with the culture within the organization. And so I've had tons of questions. I've appeared and done tons of different presentations for different organizations. Obviously, my specialty has really been focused more on the human resources element. So it's like, hey, Matt, how do you build this strong culture? The bottom line comes down to, I hate to say it, but part of it is you have to hire tough. And what I mean by hiring tough is that you have to get a feel. No one is ever going to be 100% on saying, every one of my employees fit perfect and everything's great. But I'm a huge proponent of behavioral type interviews. So I can teach people to do a lot, right? I can teach somebody how to do a lot of functions. Now, there are technical things. I can't teach somebody how to code a computer. I can't do that technical things. But for other facets of a job, I would rather have somebody that is not as proficient in that task, but has the behavioral skills to mesh with my team, than hiring somebody that is an expert, but they are so ostracizing that it has the negative, infectious attitude. This is the best analogy, John and Steve, that I can kind of give for you. Think about like this. I love analogies. That's kind of how I learned everything in the military, because it hits home. I can take a boiling cup of water, right? If I take that rock star and I go ahead and put it into a little tiny cooler, what happens? Well, like you take a look at like a Yeti cup, right? That thing will stay hot forever. If I put that same cup into a refrigerator, what's going to happen? Does the refrigerator get hot, or does that cup cool off?
The cup cools off.
Okay, so you're thinking, I'm hiring this rock star into my organization. If your culture is shit, that rock star is eventually going to cool off. I don't care what you say, because it's not addictive. It's contagious, right? But the opposite applies. If you have a culture that is already strong, I can bring somebody in that behaviorally is going to mesh into that and help them reach the levels that they're wanting to achieve. But I'm telling you, and I've seen it within, again, the military and the civilian job. If it looks too good to be true, as far as somebody that's a rock star and they're still looking for work, you got to start asking the questions. Why is that?
Sooner or later, all fingers.
Why didn't you make it in the last place, and why are you jumping from here to here?
Yeah,
I see that so many times out there. There's a group of individuals that job hop more than anybody else out there, but they don't like job hoppers. And it was interesting. I was on a call. This was years ago before I did what I did now. I used to put on in-person job fairs, and I was talking to this.
You can't say group of people without.
I'm getting to it. You're gonna get there, right?
Just reading through the BS.
I'm going slow. I'm getting you guys right. I'm getting used to this storytelling, right? Getting you guys so that you can picture this. So I'm on this call, and I'm talking to this individual, and I'm trying to get him to come to my in-person job fair. And they were very anti in-person job fair, giving me an attitude. And, you know, sometimes you either just say, okay, got it. You don't like job fairs. Cool. Move on. But this person just happened to be giving me a hard time, right? She was a recruiter, and she's talking about, I don't like job fairs. And I was like, so what do you not like about job fairs? You know, you've been so negative on the phone. You're talking to me still, but you're really negative towards job fairs. So, you know, what do you not like about job fairs? Now, just while I'm talking to her, I'm looking on LinkedIn, right? So I have her LinkedIn profile pulled up. She's like, I don't like job fairs because all the people that come to job fairs are nothing but job hoppers, and they don't stay at jobs long. I go, oh, do you mean like somebody who's been at this job for a year, this job for 9 months? And I was calling out the companies that was on her profile. So it was like 1 year, 9 months, 6 months. And I called out all of them, and all of a sudden, click, she just hung up the phone on me. But it was, she didn't like it because I went through, she said, I don't like job hoppers, but she was a job hopper. So when you get that, right, recruiters hop jobs all the time because they always think the grass is greener on the other side. It's not. You're recruiting, right? You're getting talent. There's only so many ways that you can get talent that's out there. So you can't say you don't like something, one, if you've never tried it, right? I talk, and I'm going to go back to the mentor thing that you know, we were talking about earlier, Matt, is, you know, a lot of mentors that are out there, they'll coach you. And I don't care if it's a coach or a mentor, and they're talking to you and they're like, oh, you built an application, right? You built this app, you built this, and they'll tell you how to run your business, but they've never actually looked at your app. And I have one of my buddies that I talked to, and he developed an app, and he had a mentor. And all the mentor did was bash him and bash his app. And it was just negative, 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 negative. But the guy never logged into the app. So I said, fire him as a mentor, right? Get rid of him. He's like, I can do that. I go, absolutely. You know, I know you're going through a program, but you tell him this mentor is not helping me. Because I look at it like this. If I'm a baker and I make a chocolate cake and you don't taste my chocolate cake, how can you tell me my chocolate cake sucks?
Yeah.
You can't look at my chocolate cake and say, that sucks, when you've never tasted my chocolate cake. And that's what I look at in mentors. And right, I am very passionate about mentors, right? Matt, I know you got another little thing you were talking about the other day, and I can't remember. It was not an analogy. It was it for champion? It was ears. Let's talk about ears, right? Because I know that's something that you put together, something that you're passionate about. And I know when you talked to me about it, you were passionate. Can you tell the audience out there, like, what's ears?
Sure. I mean, I think that every leader is going to have their own style, and that's great. I think it's important. I mean, you're not, first of all, you know, a leader should be able to adapt to the people that they're leading. It's never going to be one way. Unfortunately, I think a lot of times we get very stuck in a certain type of way that we want to lead people. And that can be dangerous because, unfortunately, based on our employees or people that we lead, they have differences in personality, differences in likes, dislikes. And so you have to be able to adapt your leadership to fit, you know, the group of people that you're trying to lead. So, gosh, it's probably been 15 or years, if not longer. I kind of came up with this analogy that I use that kind of outlines my leadership philosophy. So, you know, in the military, if you've ever been in the military before, we love our acronyms, right? That way we can remember everything. It's easy to digest. And so for me as a leader, and I don't care the walk of life or the business, the most critical part of leadership is communication, right? And the bigger issue you run into, and I've seen a lot of this, you can use the car salesman, right? They talk. Let me tell you about this car. It's so great. It's wonderful. The thing that we don't do enough is listen, right? It's that aspect of listening. And so for me, I thought about that, and really it was important, because how do you know how to lead people if you're not listening to what they have to say? And so I kind of crafted this acronym I use called EARS. So it's EARS. 4 fundamental things that me as a leader, and I tell all my employees and all my soldiers when I was in the military, when I came in as a leader in the organization, I sat them all down and I laid out this leadership philosophy. So the first one, E for EARS, is empowerment. This is a corny one. People say it all the time. Hey, I'm going to empower you. Here's the bottom line. Empowerment is like a superpower, man. If you truly are trusting enough to empower your team to accomplish the task, you guys can go from 0 to hero very, very quickly. People want the feeling, and let me focus on this, guys, because this is really important to get. People want the feeling. Steve, you just touched on it. You get so passionate about the mentor or the chocolate cake because it pisses you off. It's a feeling. Like, how can you know what this looks like if you've never tasted it? You can learn and talk about a lot of stuff, but the feeling is the most important thing. A person will do, bend over backwards if they feel inspired to have a feeling to do something. And empowering people allows them to feel like they own whatever is in front of them.
And you know why we know Matt is passionate about this? Did you notice he was sitting back? Suddenly he's in the front of his chair. He's in the camera like this. I love that,
Definitely. Bring it up.
So empowering people, it really comes down to, you have to give up the control and have the trust to say, this is the task I need you to do, and trust that they're going to go ahead and accomplish the task. And you guys might have heard this, is people, you've heard the analogies of, hey, let's go ahead and make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And they're like, well, piece of bread, peanut butter, there you go. Depends on what you put on. At the end of the day, it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I do the same thing with a pencil. If I give 3 people each a pencil, one person wants to go ahead and use an electric pencil sharpener, another person wants to use a pocket knife, the third one wants to go ahead and use a little elementary school twisty pencil sharpener. At the end of the day, what do you get?
Sharp pencil.
You get a sharpened pencil. But the person who chose the way to do it was empowered. They thought that manual pencil sharpener was the best way to do it. So you give them the guidelines, you give them the left and right limits of what you're expecting, and empower them to do it. You'd be fascinated on what people can come up with and how efficient they can do something, or how they could change the process to make it better to get you what you're looking for as a leader, right? So you have to empower them, because that gives them the feeling of ownership of whatever it is. Number 2, which is just as crucial, as accountability. So if I empower you to do a task, I have to hold you accountable to get it done. That is both good and bad. If you are a rock star and you knock it out of the park, you're getting the accolades. You're getting the recognition that you did a fantastic thing. If unfortunately you missed the mark or didn't meet the expectations of what was communicated to you, then there has to be some sort of corrective action. Corrective action doesn't always mean an ass chewing. Sometimes it's sitting back down to say, let's see where we went off the mark. And you have to hold them accountable, not only for you as the leader in the organization, but for them. Just like you have kids, man. If a kid messes up or does something, you have to hold them accountable for that action, because that teaches them the way that things need to be done moving forward. The third one to take a look at in EARS is R for respect. So this is one that people ask me, so what do you mean by respect, Matt? So for me, respect means that I, as the leader, respect the mantle of responsibility that I've given you as the subordinate to do that task. Too many times as a leader, we look over the shoulder of those people. We say, hey, go sharpen that pencil. And then I sit back, and when I see them grab that manual pencil sharpener, I'm like, hey, do you really want to do that? Maybe it'd be better if you use that electric pencil sharpener. You can't. The respect part is giving them, you respect the mantle of authority and responsibility you've given them to do that task. and you're not going to sit there and micromanage what's happening. You have to spot check, especially for longer projects or things. You're always going to take a look at where things are at so things don't go too far off the mark. But you have to have that ability to respect the authority or the ownership that you're giving them through empowerment. The last thing, here's another buzzword. You can, do it on the desk. Everyone hears it. Servant leadership. Servant leadership truly is a function of a efficient leader. And by being a servant leader, your job as the boss, as the leader, is to provide them the resources, the input, and things that they need to be successful. I can't, if I give somebody a pencil and they want to use a manual pencil sharpener and I'm not able to give it to them, they're losing that ownership, right? Unless there's, obviously there's certain constraints sometimes, but at the end of the day, the leader has to be there as their champion to make sure what they're doing is allowing us to be successful, because when they're successful, the leader in the organization is successful. We're there to guide them. And so that's why, when I tell people communication is critical for leadership, but you have to be able to use your ears. And that's the kind of analogy that I use to kind of explain how I focus and how I lead people. So hopefully that answered it, Steve.
Yeah, I love that. I got taught very early in my sales career. And guy's name was Mario. He was a district manager for a regional manager, I think. And he goes, listen, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Sometimes you got to talk, zip it, and listen. And just listen, right? You ask questions and get them to go down the path of where you want to go to. So
absolutely. And there's so many different aspects that I know you didn't ask me, but one thing I'll kind of give you guys as well. Depending on the size of your organization, smaller organizations, this might be a lot easier. Another little acronym that I coined that I use when I go through with organizations, I call employee care. And normally this is something that I talk with my middle level managers, but it's something that I came up with myself as something that I do. So care is CARE. So the first thing as a leader, and you see this in the military, call it circulate. You got to be seen. You can't sit in your office and hold up there. I don't care whether you're doing important meetings or doing phone calls. You have to get out with your people. You have to circulate within the organization. If they don't see you, they don't see you as the boss. They just see you as this name that's up on this pedestal. So you have to be proactive in circulating within your organization and going out and talking with people. The second thing, you have to be approachable. This is another thing. Unfortunately for Matt, I have sometimes what they call the resting ass face, right? Where I got this grumpy look on my face. It's just me. That's just how I look. But the reality is you have to allow your employees to feel that you can be approached, that they can talk to you. Even if it's, hey, how was your weekend? What's going on? So if you're circulating, but you're not approachable, you're defeating the purpose, right? They have to see you as someone that they can come up to and have a conversation with. Whether that's saying, hey, did you see the football game last night? Or, hey, here's something that has happened on the job. This bad thing happened. Because if you're not approachable, I'm telling you, they're not going to come up and tell you when bad shit happens. That's the bottom line. It's going to be the last minute. So you have
so
to
do you think, let me let's go into approachable real quick. Do you think on that, right, is there's a way that you can start that, right? I was at speaking at a conference, and one of the other panelists, we were talking about quiet quitting, and he brought this. He goes, people aren't leaving, they're not quiet quitting if their leaders are involved with them.
I agree.
And and if they don't respect their leader, right, that old cliche thing says, we don't leave a job, we leave a leader or a manager. And do you think you can start that approachability right from the get-go?
Yes. I think that you have to, right? I don't, depending on if you're a new startup or whether you're going into a new organization as a new hire in a management or executive leadership role, it doesn't matter. You have to set the expectations right there. And it really comes down to talking about things like this. You have to be able to let them know that I'm here to talk with you. Because if they don't see that, you lay out expectations, but your actions are going to support what you've laid out, right? You hear the thing as do what I say, but not as I do. if you tell them this is how you're looking to approach something, but you don't follow through in action, you're never going to gain any sort of respect because they don't believe it. They see that. And I'm telling you, their eyes are more truthful than your words are going to be. Right. So again, I mean, we could talk about the COVID piece after that, or the quiet quitting, because that's a whole different episode that we could probably do on that. But going back to this, so the next piece to really understand is you have to be responsive, Steve. So you're circulating, you're approachable, that people want to come to you and they want to have conversations. And undoubtedly, you're always going to have conversations that are eventually going to talk about work, good or bad things that are happening. You as the boss or the leader have to make sure that you're responsive. And responsive is not just saying, okay, hey, I didn't know about this issue, let me go ahead and look into it. Responsive is then coming back, if you choose to do that, and giving them a full-blown, okay, here's what we're going to do about X, Y, and Z, and why you're going to do it. Because the reality comes down to people want to have an understanding of why things are happening, even if it's an outcome that they don't prefer or don't like. You taking the proactive step to go back to the individual that's asked the question or has the issue and communicate it back to them and saying, here's the reasons why I made that decision. They might not like the decision, but they respect the fact that you came back to them to follow up and say, here's what we're going to do.
True. Yep.
Depends on the situation. It's unfortunately, sometimes it has to be in an email. It depends on the what was brought to me, but I'd rather have a conversation in person any day than via email, right? The last thing to understand, and this was one that it probably took me a while to understand, is truly what being empathetic means, and being empathetic as a leader, right? As Steve said, putting yourself in somebody's shoes, how do you know if you can't empathize with what they're at? There's going to be experiences that you're going to have brought to you from employees that you might not have ever experienced. That does not mean that you can't be empathetic. You just have to be able to be analytical and have enough critical thinking to put yourself in that type of a situation and allow you to feel what that would feel like, because that's going to help you in your response of whatever you're going to do, right? So though, again, those 4 letters, employee care, you have to circulate, you have to be approachable, you have to be responsive, and you have to be empathetic. If you can do those 4 things, I don't care if you have 2 employees or 200 employees, whether you're doing that yourself as the president and CEO, or whether you're teaching that to your midline, mid-level managers or direct leaders, they have to do that. And COVID made it 1,000 times more difficult. And even now, post-COVID, with this hybrid or virtual world, it means that leaders have to be much more proactive in having employee care. You can't walk around. So what are you doing to get the pulse of the individuals? I'll tell you, for me, I was in the military leading a very large organization during COVID. And within a matter of a day or two, everybody had to go home, right? Everything shut down. The way we did business could not be the way we did business then. So what did I do? It was time consuming. My things I normally did as a leader completely changed. I had to trust other people to do a lot more of the tasks that I was doing, but I spent a majority of my time. I would randomly, every day, I had a list and a call sheet. I'd call 5 employees and I say, hey, how you doing? How are things going? How are you? How's your family? Just to get a gauge on what was happening. That was how I was circulating. And the more times, maybe that first time I called them, they wouldn't tell me anything. But 2 or 3 weeks later, if they got randomly called again, they might open up to say, you know what, I'm having a tough time. I'm trying to work these hours. My kids are home going to school. I have this, and this. Now they're seeing that you're approachable. And I think in this hybrid world, you're having to have leaders that not only physically are circulating with employees that are there, but they have to come up with ways to still connect with employees across the country if that's how they're broken up with their jobs. So it's a very different mindset.
Yeah, I love what I love what you said there. It's something that we actually, I just implemented. We have a new hire that started with my organization, and he came up and he's like, listen, you guys have a phenomenal culture. We were just ranked number 6 best place to work for the South Florida Business Journal, right, in the small business. And we had a great culture, and he's new, and he's like, here's something that my CEO did at a last company where every month somebody just put time on their calendar and he just talked. You didn't talk about work. You talked about personal life. And, you know, I rolled it out. I know most of my employees, we have personal conversations at least weekly, but some of the new people, we had the conversations, and I learned a lot about, you know, these employees and, you know, what motivates them and stuff like that. That's not just a work thing. But John, I know, right, Matt said a lot of things there. And I know, right, with one of the things that you're always passionate about talking, I know you got a question for Matt. I feel it in my heart. You have something that you want to ask Matt right now.
Well, I'm not exactly sure why you teed that up, but because I don't know if it's about like how we close, but I did want to tell Matt, he has a title for the next book, Weeding Through the BS of Leadership. I think that was amazing what he gave us. Great nuggets. I mean, I love the acronyms. I agreed with everything, except I'm going to call you out on one thing.
Okay.
Because it failed for me. It failed for me, although you said it as something you should do. It failed for me as a leader to adapt to every, let's say not every, but you said kind of adapt to the personality, in a way I'm rephrasing, of the people that you're leading. And I think that, you know, is where you have to know when to hold the line, right? And I want to throw that to you with, especially with generational, you can't really treat the millennial like you treat the Gen Xer, like you treat the boomer, with leadership. And I think the way you adapt to them, you have to be careful, because you could adapt so much that you lose your identity. You lose your way in your leadership just because you're trying to adapt to that person. And so there is the only place where I think I've changed. I've like, I'll pick my battles, but if I know what I know, I'm going to push back, and I'm going to say, this is how we're going to do this.
And I understand where you're coming from on that, John. I mean, I think that part of it is that you are leading, especially nowadays, multi-generational teams, right? You can't lead someone that is a boomer the same way that you're going to lead a millennial or Gen Z. It's not the same. Their desires and aspirations of what they're looking to do can be very, very different. Their motivations for doing things can be very, very different. You as the leader have to figure out, how do I inspire this individual to accomplish a task that they want to do, right? And so I'm very specific using that term, inspire. So here's the trick. Here's the secret sauce, right? Your Mac sauce.
The Matt sauce?
I call it the Mac. It's the Mac sauce, right? The just like a McDonald's Big Mac. It's the special Mac sauce you put on it.
I think you need to change it to the Matt sauce.
The Matt sauce.
I'm going to splash you with some Matt sauce.
Yeah, in a good way. But this all comes down, John. It all comes down to influence. How do you influence a situation? You have to. Okay, so for me, there's very rigid things that I find that are my core for my individual, right? I'm a very ethical, moral. There are very rigid things that is who I am as an individual. You're not adapting to someone that is going to question your morality or question your ethical decisions on things, but you have to be able to inspire people within different cultures differently. And here's a trick that I found out. Depends on the size of your team. If it's you and 2 employees, this might be a little more difficult, but in a larger organization, you don't have to inspire everybody. That's the trick. Do you want to know who you have to inspire? The person that can inspire other people. It comes down to, you're not going to have all the skills. You're not the best boss on earth. I'm sorry, Steve, you're not, I'm not. We all have our warts. We all have the things to work with. But what you have to do to be a successful leader is find those around you that can help you influence the Gen Z, the millennials, right? They have the ability to connect in a way that you might not be able to, just because of who you are. And that's okay. As long as the things that you're doing is not breaking you as a person, you have to find ways to be able to be successful and adapt, because you're not going to, the way the workforce is right now, it is multi-generational and they want different things. You have some people that want to come in the office because that's how they're raised and that seems comfortable. You have another generation like, hell no, I want to go ahead and sit at the house and be able to do it in my pajamas. How do you work with both of them? how do you lead both of those groups? They both have different drivers. They both have different motivators. You have to be able to find out how you can either influence them directly or find the person that can influence them and influence them to influence them, right? It really comes down to that. Steve talks about, you lead people, not organizations, to a certain extent, but the same thing comes down to people join organizations for a lot of reasons. People stay in organizations because of the people, not necessarily because of the organization. So when we talk vision and mission and all these great things, when you can have somebody buy into a vision of an organization, they're sold. There's no influence that needs to be done. They bought into the purpose of what you're looking to do.
Yeah, and in health coaching, I call it inspiration, like you said, as opposed to motivation, where motivation is this external force. Once you believe it, you're inspired, and you kind of, it's a totally different.
100%, John. I mean, and I know that Steve obviously was in sales for such a long period of time. People always like to say they're selling the car. Let me tell you the features of this car and what's all great, right? So when you take a look at features and benefits of anything, but you have to correlate that down to, okay, here's a feature, here's what the benefit is, but what's the so what? Because if you can make it a feeling, it is much more impactful. John, you do health and fitness. Here's the bottom line. Every single year, January 1st, I signed up for the gym. That first month, I'm kicking ass. I'm doing great things. And what happens? February, I'm like, I'm tired tonight. I'm not going to go ahead and go to the gym. And then all of a sudden, the next night, something came up. What happened? You were motivated to do it the first month, right? You wanted to go ahead and kick ass. The reality came down to you didn't find value in it. Not value enough for you to continue going through the suck to get where you needed to go. And that's the difference. You have to be able to provide somebody value, internal feeling of value for them to say, I'm all in and I'm going to go ahead and continue through the good and the bad because I found the purpose of the organization or the task that I'm doing.
Man, I just got to jump here a second. I'm going to tell you, John, like we're way over what we said we were going to time. Yeah. We're going to break Matt up into 2 episodes. We're going to keep going for a little bit because there is more gold and nuggets coming out. And one he talked about, and this is where I was going with you, was I know you've asked a lot of questions about, right, leading, the different generations, right? It's kind of been a question you got, but I'm skipping that now, right? Matt's touching on you, right? And your book that you wrote about habits and changing habits, right? Like, does that with what Matt is talking about, does that kind of resonate with you of what you're thinking, or what's your thought on that?
I mean, if you're going to get somebody to do something and they don't buy anything, right? If they don't see the value, they're only going to go as far as that external motivation. And once it runs out, there's nothing you can do. You can't pull that person, you're just going to run out of steam. And for me personally, it was, I think with anyone who's successful, and we're not talking religion and government and all that, but once you have that belief, nothing's going to stop you. I mean, nothing's going to stop you. And so Matt, I mean, to me, it boils down to the habit. That's just a term, but the habit only is formed because of the continuous action, which takes 100% inspiration, 100% belief. That value proposition, like you said. And so 100%, Steve, I do agree with everything that Matt has said. My only thing was that leadership thing, as far as different audiences. I would just say, obviously, Matt, that's not easy, right? That's a lot of work. What you're saying is
absolutely
tremendous investment. That there's no app for that. We talk about delayed gratification on some of the other episodes that we've recorded, and I love that because for that employee that wants to get this result, it may not happen in 2 or 3 days. They may think they just have to do these few things, but man, it's a grind and it's a thing, and there's a whole, right? Are they going to stick with that whole grind and delayed gratification be possible, or are they just going to give up on you?
So let me give you another example of why what you're talking about on that leadership. Let's use McDonald's as an example, right? So McDonald's hires a ton of employees, and if you look at McDonald's, it's multi-generational. You might have a 65-year-old that's working at McDonald's for extra money, or you have a 16-year-old that's their first job, right? Do you think that people that are working at McDonald's are bought into McDonald's culture of, oh my gosh, they make the best burgers in the world and they're going ahead and I have to be a part of them? No, most of those in the McDonald's philosophy, whether that's good or bad, is a transactional philosophy. They know I'm going to bring these people in to do these tasks at this level, and that's all you get. When you're building an organization, if you are passionate and your blood, sweat, and tears, like, I look at Steve for having, being an entrepreneur and starting this business, he's all in, right? And so when you take a look at hiring employees, it comes down to, number one, that behavioral interview to make sure that you're hiring people that are going to fit into your culture. But you might need to have people that have different skill sets from across that spectrum of generations, right? And for you to be successful, you have to figure out how you can lead those individuals. And so it is tough. You can motivate people with a lot if it is a transactional thing. And then maybe at a time you just started this fledgling and you need somebody to go ahead and write code. Right? You're hiring them on a 1099 as a contract employee. It is a transaction. That's different than somebody that you're hiring. And I know this sounds really corny, guys, but to be part of your family. Like when on these small businesses, you bring somebody in, it's like you're trying to build up this special thing to move forward. And so I think there's a different mindset associated with it. John talking about the healthcare stuff and habits. I agree. I talked about the features and benefits. A feature to me correlates over to a motivator, right? I show you that this Mustang has this many horsepower. Oh, that motivates me to do X, Y, and Z. But when you are able to show how that feature is a true benefit to you, that touches to the individual feeling, the core of the individual. And that's what you have to be able to do. And that's not easy. Again, this isn't something that Matt pulled out of his ass. It really comes down to, it's been 30 years of experience in doing the wrong thing and falling on my face to come up with, this is a way to lead this.
And weeding through the BS. That's why we're doing this, because, if that experience can help someone else kind of avoid it or learn a better path, that's exactly why we're doing it. So you've been spot on. I do think we're going to have to chop this into 2 episodes, but we like to close with a little game. Steve, you want to give it to him?
All right, Matt. So here is what you have to do. Okay. It's an old game. Maybe you played it back, a long time ago. It was called back then 2 Truths and a Lie. But what we're going to do is we're just going to call it, we want 2 statements, right? 2 statements from Matt. It could be about personal, about business, whatever. 1 statement needs to be true. 1 statement needs to be BS. You're not going to tell us which is which. John and I are going to try to guess which one's the BS. We have a little game here, and I think, am I leading 3-2?
It's 4-4. It's 4-4.
It's 4-4?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what? The age thing got me on the last one. I forgot. We came up with a tie. So we're tied right now of reading the BS, right? We want to be BS detectors. So think of 2 statements, 1 true, 1 false. Say both of them, and we're gonna take our guess.
Oh gosh, put me on the spot.
Of course.
2 statements.
That's what we're trying to do. We're weeding through. We want to know the Matt Krenz. We learned so much about you today and your philosophy and, your leadership. We can tell why you were so successful in the military because of your leadership philosophies. I went into the military, but I was a 4 and done, right? I did my 1 tour, did my time, jumped out of the airplanes, got out, right? Because I knew that there was something else for me. You went and you got out, got back in, and look at what you did, right? Your career, not many people can do that. And when you look at that, the people that go up and become sergeant major and get to where you were actually at and what you did, very few people in the world have done that. So 1, congratulations. 2, we're excited, but man,
Echo that.
I got a lot of nuggets today. And I'm excited about that. So let's hear the truth. Let's hear the BS. And let's
All
see.
right.
John, where are we going to be at? Where are we going to end?
Day one. I'm ready.
Okay. See, which one? The truth first or the
Oh, no,
BS?
you don't.
You
I
don't
know, I'm
tell
just saying.
us.
I'm not going to tell you. I'm just thinking through my head of what.
Oh, he's trying to be like, what are all these guys are trying to be tricky?
They both sound so crazy. So,
Okay, good.
Okay. I've met and got to eat dinner with the King of England. And the second one is I have a very large family that tends to kind of be a little spastic and not like each other.
Man. I thought maybe you were going to talk about a pool game in Denver, Colorado, about, different things. So,
boy, oh boy. I mean, he definitely went too extreme.
let
me see that poker face.
John, I'm going to let you pick first.
I'm going to say the BS is the king. I'm going to say you did not meet or have lunch with royalty. Sorry, Matt.
I am going to be 100% in agreement on that as well.
And you're right.
You said it with conviction, but
you said it with conviction. If you would have said the president, I would have said yes.
Yeah. I think the big thing to take a look at is and one thing I appreciate about weeding through the bullshit. No one's perfect. For all of us that have families, and it comes down to being real and letting people know that, hey, this is life. And family is one of those things that for me is very important, but it's also real, right? There's no such thing as a perfect. Everything is a work in progress. And, again, I have 5 kids. Steve knows that, 5 kids and a grandchild, and it's chaotic, but you love them to death, right? You might not always like each other, but you love each other.
It's funny that you say that. Is I didn't know this, John, because I didn't look at our Facebook. Christine, my lovely wife, said you wouldn't want me on a guest on your show, right? She will talk about the real boss, right? and really weeding through the BS. So you may have to have her on, John. We'll get a co-host for you one day. Have her on. We didn't have to, Matt. You know what? We didn't even have to hit the button today.
Oh,
that's a lot of bullshit, if you ask me.
gotcha.
We didn't even have to hit that today, right? We appreciate, Matt. You got down to the dirty, and that's what we look for on this podcast. We want to really get down to that and see it, and get people to speak from the heart. I felt you spoke from the heart today. You gave us a lot of nuggets. We appreciate you being on. Again, we appreciate leadershipbooks.com, Owl, Think Big websites. And Matt will let you know when this goes live. And we appreciate your time. And I'm going to call you because I think Weeding Through the BS needs a leadership book authored by Matt Krenz.
Absolutely.
I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
Putting it out there.
I got you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a great night,
guys. I'm going to just
Thanks
stop
for
the
having me
recording
on.
here. Yeah.
Good night, Matt.